Hey, my name is Sean. I'm an Enneagram teacher and a psychotherapist, and today we're talking all about type 3 on the Enneagram. Type 3 goes by a couple of different names. They're often called the performer, the achiever, or the competitor. And these names evoke a character who's very competent and very efficient. Type 3s are really great at setting a goal for themselves and forging a direct path to that goal and making things look easy in the process. However, type 3s can exhaust themselves because they work so hard. And they often have a habit of losing track of who they really are and themselves because they're so caught up in what they're doing and trying to put on this persona or image of being someone who's successful. So let's start with the origins of type 3. The basic unconscious belief for type 3 is that the world rewards doing and not being. Many 3s talk about growing up in an environment in which their accomplishments and achievements were really paid attention to. This doesn't necessarily have to have been a malicious dynamic. We can think of a parent who was really paying attention to their child's grades. And so whenever they did well in school and got good grades, they were loved and got a lot of attention and perhaps rewards as well. And so this internalized that message that if I perform well and I succeed and achieve, then I'll be loved. But conversely, if I don't, then perhaps I'll be ignored or even punished. And so therefore 3s develop a fear of failure. If they do fail, then that means that they're unlovable. This type pattern can also kind of evolve from situations in which 3s had to step up into a position of competence. Perhaps there was a parent missing in the home, and therefore they kind of had to step into this role and be able to get things done and be driven and achieve. Conversely, they can have grown up in real hardship. So for example, extreme poverty, or perhaps there was abuse in the home as well. And so this internal message became that I need to succeed, I need to achieve and perform and win to rise above my circumstances. And we can kind of see this dynamic playing out in the idea of the American dream. The American culture is very focused on being the best and achieving and winning and succeeding and performing. And these are all really important aspects of type 3s as well. Type 3s can be found in the heart center of the Enneagram, where the core emotion is shame. Unlike type 2s who are in conflict with their shame and type 4s who overdo their shame, type 3s numb out their shame. To best understand this, let's return to the idea of their core belief for a second, that the world rewards doing and not being. This sets up a dichotomy within two parts of the 3. There's the part of them that's just being who they really are, and then there's the part of them that's doing, that's out there performing and achieving and succeeding. And so therefore the shame in this instance is associated with the part of them that's just being. 3s often got the message early on that this part of them wasn't really valued or lovable, or at least not as valuable and lovable as the part of them that was achieving and accomplishing and succeeding things. And so therefore 3s will push away any kind of feelings associated with this part of themselves, because 3s often have a very keen eye of obstacles that can get in the way of them achieving things, and their feelings is one of those things. If they get too bogged down in how they feel about things, they won't accomplish things, and therefore, in the logic of this type, they won't be lovable or valuable. Now 3s are an image type, and the particular image that 3s are adopting is of someone who is successful and competent. And 3s often are successful and competent, but they have a really good knack for being able to move into a new environment and appear to know what they're doing and that they're really good at it, even though they have no idea what they're doing. So 3s kind of often described as a chameleon in the sense they have this knack for being able to read a certain situation and adopt a persona of success in a particular situation. And this is why it's a little bit strange for 3s to kind of be considered a heart type, because they're not really showing on their emotions much, but what they are actually doing is being very relational in this circumstance, because they're going into a situation and they're figuring out from people what success looks like. What do these people associate with someone who is accomplished in this area, and then adopting that persona, even if they don't actually have that competence or experience. The trouble with all of this is that 3s adopt these personas of someone who's successful and accomplished, and they can actually fall in love with these parts of themselves. They can become so attached to them that they lose sight of who they really are and love the idea of them being successful more than actually themselves as a person. And this brings us to the passion for type 3, which is called vanity. Vanity in this context refers to the capacity to be able to adopt a particular image or persona that will be viewed in a positive light. And so we've talked about this idea of 3s being able to walk into a situation and kind of mold themselves and adapt themselves to that situation so that others view them in a positive light. They see them as someone who's successful and as competent. This passion is sometimes also called deceit, in the sense that there is an element of deception in this, that threes are deceiving other people to believe that they are successful or competent or have achieved a lot, when perhaps they haven't, or there's a lot more to the story. One example I've heard about this was a three who bluffed his way through a job interview for a job that he had no idea how to do. And 3 weeks later, they figured this out and they fired him on the spot because it was clear he had no idea what he was doing. But in those 3 weeks, he'd actually learned quite a lot about how to do the job. And so he just went to a different company who did a similar thing and managed to keep that job because he'd spent enough time to gain those skills and kind of bluff his way through it. And so this might sound kind of bad in the sense that there's a deception element going on here, but remember that we're talking about a character who associates their worth and their lovability with what they do. And so it's so critically important for threes to be able to do this because there is so much baggage and shame associated with who they really are. And obviously the downside of this as well is that there's this element of self-deception here. If threes are constantly striving to be someone who is successful and competent, think about all the things they're missing out on because they're not actually engaged with who they really are. They might be doing things they don't necessarily want to do or even enjoy because they are associated with success and winning, but the cost and downside of that is they actually miss out on things that they might really love. The defense mechanism for type 3 is called identification. And this is the process that threes go to in order to locate a particular image of success and then adapting themselves to that. A wife of a three that I know spoke about her husband kind of stepping into a new role, and she noticed that over the course of a couple of weeks, the wardrobe started to change and he started to dress like this particular role. And so this is the process of them kind of adapting their image to fit a particular circumstance. The defensive component of this is that threes obviously associate a lot of vulnerability and pain with who they really are, their true self. And so even though it might seem like a bad idea or deceitful, what they're really doing is protecting themselves from being hurt because there is a lot of pain associated with this part of themselves. And so threes will perhaps even identify with values that particular people in their life had. So for example, if they had a father who really wanted them to be a sports star, they might value achievement in the field of sports over something like academic achievement. The growth path for type 3s involves them getting in touch with who they really are. Now, this almost sounds like a cliche, I guess, in today's society, but for threes, this can be a huge deal and a very long journey for them because they're so wound up in this idea of success and this image that they've cultivated, all the while neglecting their true self and who they really are. Now, there are obviously a couple of steps to this, probably the first one being threes actually being able to recognize this dynamic that's playing out and understanding that they are neglecting part of themselves in favor of this image they're pursuing. They then need to slow down, and this can be really, really difficult for threes because they are so caught up in working hard and being efficient and ticking off things on their checklist. And so just being able to actually slow down and tune in with themselves is super important. And the process then involves them actually getting in touch with what they really want, not what they're doing just to be successful and to win and achieve things. And this kind of journey archetype is played on a lot in Hollywood and just in different movies in general. This idea of someone kind of quitting a life of success and pursuing their true passion. So we might have a really high-flung lawyer who's got his own law firm, and he suddenly wakes up one day and realizes that he hates his job and he hates his life, and so he quits his job and leaves his wife who doesn't love him anymore, and leaves behind his 2 kids and sells his house and his yacht and his sports car, and he moves to Africa to start a lion conservation sanctuary or something because that's what really matters to him. And so there's this idea of moving away from this typical image of success and instead following one's heart, what really matters to someone. And on the Enneagram, threes have a direct connection to 6, and this is considered their growth path. But this can be really confusing and it doesn't really make sense and kind of counterintuitive. So to kind of break it down, 3s start to show up more like healthy 6s in the sense that they really take on these qualities of questioning and self-doubt, but in a good way. 3s kind of slow down and start to check in more with their inner world and go, is this really what I want? Is this important to me? Why am I doing this? And so these processes can actually be really helpful for threes. Another element they take on is the fear, but in a good way. One example I've heard about this from a three is that he will go snowboarding, and on the first kind of couple of days, he'll hit it really, really hard. And so he'll do all the hardest tracks on the snowboard area and just go absolutely crazy. And he's getting a bit older, but he'll kind of do it and try to keep up with the younger kids that are there. And then a couple of days in, he'll pause and take a step back and go, whoa, what the hell am I doing? I'm way too old to be doing this. I could really hurt myself. I need to slow the hell down. And so fear can actually be really helpful for threes to kind of get in touch with the reality of the situation, but also what they're missing out on by pursuing success so much. A last important element of this is the loyalty component for sixes. Threes can actually really use their capacities and their abilities to help other people succeed. So instead of feeling as though they need to kind of drive the boat and be the one at the forefront who's pushing everything and getting everything done and being the winner, they can kind of get more involved with other people and use their capacity for success and achieving things to help other people accomplish their goals as well. That brings us to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please drop us a like, it does help out. And you can also subscribe to our channel to get updates on the latest Enneagram videos from us. If you are a type 3, I'd really love to hear about your experience, so please drop a comment below. And for the rest of you, if you have questions or other things to add, you can also make a comment. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.